Hi, I'm Elena Maceiras, and for the fall 2025 semester, my group and I have decided to do our presentation on this New York Times article, Marriage Equality and Trans Rights Are Two Sides of the Same Coin for Many, which dives deep into the shared struggle between marriage equality and transgender rights movements. So, Harman and Sahotra discuss the parallels of the struggle for transgender rights and marriage equality rights, and how they are each perceived to be interconnected within the LGBTQ plus community, fighting for the autonomy and legal protection of its people. This connection has brought up tension as some activists are divided, believing that the issues surrounding the trans community are setting the LGBTQ plus community back from the progress they have already made, especially with conservative efforts to overturn Obergefell versus Hodges. This landmark Supreme Court case is what solidified same-sex marriage as a fundamental right. The recent uptick in political backlash towards the trans community, with 27 states enacting bans on gender transition treatments for minors, has reminded the activists of similar discrimination towards same-sex marriage a decade ago. The passing of its legislation has reopened controversy and arguments surrounding gender-affirming treatment, especially for younger individuals. The article acknowledges that progress with civil rights movements like these are gradual with many highs and lows. Despite this, the LGBTQ plus community has continued to support each other in multiple civil rights movements. So for the first concept, we're going to be talking about intersectionality. So the textbook describes intersectionality as the idea that identities such as gender, sexuality, race, and social status all intersect with each other, which can shape the privilege or even discrimination they experience throughout their lives. With this idea, oppression can be seen not as a single issue, but through a different perspective where systems of power alter the treatment of individuals based on the various identities that make up who they are. So when we connect this to the article displays intersectionality through the experiences of both gay and transgender communities. Both of these communities step outside of the gender norms enforced in society, which unfortunately brings a lot of backlash and discrimination towards them. The activists that were interviewed in the article explain and further emphasize how the movement for marriage equality was more about the push to maintain the gender norms, along with struggle of others accepting to view their sexuality. This remains the same for the issues now with transgender youth. There is discomfort felt towards others who do not conform to the gender binary norms, and the discomfort ultimately manifests itself as discrimination. The intersecting gender-based and sexuality-based discrimination clearly illustrates how these movements can be seen as two sides of the same coin. Intersectionality also allows for a deeper understanding as to why some groups experience intensified discrimination compared to others within society. An individual may bear the brunt of various kinds of discrimination because of the way identities intersect. It highlights how different individuals with identities that go outside of the norm can face multiple levels of discrimination, and how policy actions related to this matter of enforcing the norm can make negative social attitudes stronger. In the continuous fight for equality, recognizing these concepts are imperative to progress forward.
Hi, my name is Jeline, and I will be discussing Concept 2, Gender Binary and Gender Diversity, based on Chapter 4 from our textbook, Beyond Binaries. What is gender binary? Gender binary is the idea that there are only two classifications of gender, which are male or female. This view can be very controversial in today's society because it doesn't take into consideration the variety of gender identities, such as transgenders or non-binary individuals. Because of gender binary, these individuals could feel like they don't fit into the norm because it doesn't accurately represent who they are. Chapter 4 talks about how sex and gender are not just binary, as many individuals identify themselves outside the traditional male or female label. It also states that even though it is more socially accepted, these gender identities, these individuals still receive backlash and face discriminations. Chapter 4 connects to the article because both same-sex marriage and transgender rights struggle with the concept that there can only be two ways, either straight or gay and male or female. The article also talks about how same-sex marriage is more accepted, but there is still a rejection towards transgender rights. They're both connected, both concepts are connected. They're basically the same root, different branch. But one concept is more socially accepted while the other one receives backlash. The article also uses examples of people's personal opinions towards this matter. Some people are against the transgender rights or don't understand it based on their own personal beliefs, but that can make those individuals feel like they're not seen, like they're not accepted, like they don't fit in into this world, which could have a negative impact on them mentally.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about gender identity. So the textbook defines gender identity as a person's understanding of themselves as gendered, whether part of the binary or not. The textbook also describes gender identity as a deeply felt sense of belonging to a specific category. Even with this, how we define gender identity is continuously evolving with various descriptions and categories of gender identities. So when we connect this to the article, the sentiment that one's identity comes from a deep feeling is shared between the textbook and the article. The article emphasizes that gender identity is something that is deeply felt and not something that others argue is a temporary phase that will just go away. With this being said, gender identity is still more than just a personal feeling. Gender identity is the center of decision making when it comes to medical decisions about access to different treatments, especially for younger individuals. Gender affirming treatments help with gender dysphoria that the transgender youth might feel, as it allows them to have their physical appearance match their personal gender identity. This ultimately would improve their mental health outcome as well. However, the article highlights that even though medical professionals are in support of administering these procedures, they still lack further research for the risks and long-term effects. This is why gender identity has become the main target for conservative policies that are being pushed today. Because of this, the focus of cultural conflict has been shifted to the transgender community. There has been a large attempt, as seen through recent conservative policy, to control and maintain the pre-existing gender norms instead of allowing for free gender expression. Since the LGBTQ plus community ventures outside of those norms, it has become the main cause of discrimination towards these communities. Even with the progress that has already been made, the conflict reflects the movement for same-sex marriage and emphasizes further that the fight for freedom to openly express gender nonconformity is a continuous battle.
In this article, the anniversary of the Supreme Court's same-sex marriage ruling serves as a reminder of how deeply marriage shapes relationship stability and family well-being. The couples featured in this article describe how legal recognition strengthens their sense of security, especially when raising children or navigating everyday life documents such as birth certificates or health forms. Several couples point out that without these legal protections, even simple tasks like enrolling a child in school or making medical decisions can become stressful or uncertain. At the same time, the article shows how increasing attacks on transgender rights creates stress and uncertainty for LGBTQ plus families, highlighting why access to marriage protections is so important for emotional and legal stability. These policy shifts affect not only individual identity, but the overall climate in which families try to build safe, supportive relationships. Many individuals describe the feeling that marriage gives a relationship legitimacy and reduces the stigma or discrimination they face, which directly connects to themes in Chapter 8 of our textbook, Psychology of Women and Gender, such as relationships and benefits of marriage, which is my topic of discussion on this slide. This chapter emphasizes that marriage is not just a personal commitment, but a social institution that influences mental health, support systems, and the distribution of power and gender roles within relationships. It also notes that when couples have access to equal rights and recognition, they are better able to share responsibilities and maintain healthy communication. Overall, our article demonstrates that marriage benefits extend beyond romance as they provide security, public validation, and resilience for families navigating gender and sexual identity-based discrimination.
Hello, my name is Abraham Urbina, and today I'll be talking about gender roles and romantic relationships. So, gender roles are normally prescribed like expectations of how men and women should be behaving, like dating wise, intimacy wise, long-term partnership. Basically, in the article, it explains that even after 10 years of marriage equality, like them winning the case and everything, many advocates now see trans rights as part of the same fight against strict gender expectations. These norms basically like shape who expresses emotions, what relationships are seen legitimate. So the connection to the article is basically that they're fighting for same-sex marriage. They won it, and it's still being challenged by traditional heterosexual gender roles, like how men and women should be treated in relationships. This connects to the textbooks and the concept of gender roles in romantic relationships because it says that society assigns certain roles to men and women, for example, like who should lead, how emotions should be expressed, and what a normal couple should look like. The article shows that both same-sex couples and trans youth are being targeted when they don't fit those traditional roles. So people from the original marriage equality case talk about how the discrimination that they face came from discomfort with gender nonconformity. Similarly, bans on gender affirming care try to push young people back into gender roles tied to their assigned sex. Even though the article does focus on legal rights, it also shows how like gender roles affect real families. Couples worry about whether their marriages and parental roles will be recognized, and parents of trans youth worry about whether they can safely stay in their states for certain laws or rules or how people treat them. This supports a textbook idea from chapter 8 um, of Psychology and Women and Gender that gender roles don't just shape romantic behavior, but they also shape the safety, stability, and legitimacy of whole families. Romantic equality, the reason that it matters is because romantic equality requires dismantling restrictive gender expectations. The article also shows how genders shape who is allowed to love openly and authentically. So, basically, yeah, gender roles in romantic relationships are shaping how society looks, and based on this article, it's affecting a lot of trans people or homosexual people in society, and it's having a lot of people worried, and uh, a lot of people are standing up for it, trying to just be themselves without anyone having to judge them, really. And the norms are changing in today's society in this generation. Like, you don't, it could be a woman, it could be a guy, it could be whatever. You don't have to specifically have certain roles in relationships, although that's how it's been for the longest, and that is shaping how people see themselves or how people move on about their relationships in life. Um, thank you. Okay, so for future considerations, we put for one, we could push for better policies that support non-binary people in school and workplaces. Two, we put providing more mental health resources for transgender and non-binary people, as they face backlash from and discrimination from society in general. So we could also strengthen legal protections and expand mental health for the LGBTQ. Those are other considerations that we have added as well. And by implementing gender diversity training in schools and workplaces, it can educate people and decrease the harassment of these individuals due to the nonconformity. Other policies and resources should be provided on gender identity and support. And for the last one, we put that we can consider promoting inclusive policy that treat LGBT rights as interconnected. This can lead to interconnection within society. And these are the references. This is the references continued. And that's it. Thank you.